December 2nd meeting to order, and we will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry. And just I would like to have a moment of silence for what's been going on in California with the shootings, whether it be terrorists or whatever. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. First order of business is approval of minutes. I've read and reviewed both for the November 4th and November 18th meeting. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1670.
So at the last meeting, actually this was continued at the last meeting, we were waiting for a revised plan. I had been out in the field and we did make some changes to the wetland line. And this plan reflects those. And I think we did open and talk about this at the first meeting, there's, right? Did work.
Yeah.
Oh, we continued all the way from the beginning?
Right.
Oh, wow, okay. So this is the first time. So this is a vacant lot on Brentwood. We did open this and we've continued for 2 meetings now. We did review it back in November and made a few changes to the line. There's an ephemeral pool within the wetland, and that's shown on the plan, and the appropriate buffer zones are also on there.
We added wetland flags 1B to 3B, and we moved wetland flags 3A through 5A up gradient. All the flags were located by survey. And
It's not proposed at this time. You're going in front of planning anyways.
no, this is the first step.
Okay. Joe, any questions?
I see the Ann-Wright application is being made on behalf of Tony and Susan Conti Eaton, and I'm looking at the abutting property ownership. Just again, it's not a survey; it's a plan here for wetlands, but it's saying the ownership is now formally Susan Conti. Am I understand that this lot is subdivided from an adjacent lot at some point?
At some point, I want to say in the early 80s. Is that correct, Jen?
So this lot was created from a parent lot adjacent to it, and the question of where the wetland line very well could be a result of that subdivision is what I'm driving at. So I just want to point that out for the record.
I think, planning will be looking at that too, how this was created and whether they created their own hardship by dividing a lot that, contains all wetland.
Yeah, and I just wanted it on our record as well, because what we're seeing is, what I'm seeing is clearly a line that which is what we're going to act on, assuming it's accurate. By doing so, we're going to end up with a very, very narrow, if any, envelope at all where something could be built, let alone. I don't want to use the word unbuildable, but I want to say that this very well could be the result of a subdivision previously made by a.
Right. The planning board plan, or the plan for the subdivision says something about maybe buildable or something like that in the language on the plan, I believe.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
The planning regulations and zoning regulations allow lots to be created whether they're buildable or not for any other purpose. You can create a lot that's worthless, and your law allows you to do that, and good for you. But I just want to be clear that I'm seeing that there is an abutter by reference on this plan that's the same name as the applicant, and it draws curiosity to me. The line itself, you've made some adjustment. This is what we're looking at. The ephemeral pool says approximate. Are we ruling on the ephemeral pool?
We didn't know because there's sort of the wrong season. I think in the ephemeral pool criteria, it's high water that defines the pool, and there's obviously no water in it, or there wasn't water in it at the time of observation, so nothing to...
Leaf litter, evidence of any other sort?
Right, but defining the topography, I think that's what they picked up, is you could kind of pick up, and you can see how their line sort of follows the topography out there, so they're going based on that. But it's a very large wetland, and the pool, I wouldn't say, you wouldn't want to delineate it, I think, outside of the season.
No.
There's a lot of open area out there. The limits of it could be difficult to define now.
But if
But it doesn't really matter, the other thing, because the whole wetland's within 100 feet of that definition, so it's all ephemeral pool habitat.
That's what I was just going to ask, and I think you've just clarified it, is that we're ruling on the line, which in essence creates the no-builds.
Right.
But we're not so much defining the no-builds, or are we? We're doing both, really.
Yep, we are, yep.
So can you build a structure between the buffer zone of the ephemeral pool habitat and the no-build zone?
So the 75 is the no-build zone. They would need waivers in order to build on this lot.
They
So
would?
They would, 100% would.
Would, okay. Thank you, almost.
I know I talked to you, Jen, about this. I think what happened, and that'll be an easy fix, you just look at the as-built, the original subdivision. The Conti family bought, when they bought the house, they bought both lots at the same time. So I think that was an original lot, but I'm be willing to bet that they bought it at a reasonable price, because to me, right now, it looks AKA non-buildable, but that's the end of that. But we wouldn't act on this, but we're just gonna define the wetland lands anyways. But this has gotta go before planning anyways.
Right, and certainly that'll be clarified if we come in with anything to the commission.
Yeah, because that'll be a big difference. Thank you. Deb?
No questions.
So, Jen, am I correct in saying that you've got the A and B series cutting through the property, and everything, as we're looking at this sheet above it, is all either wetlands or ephemeral pool?
It's all wet, yep.
It's all wet, okay, thanks.
No comment.
Have any questions in motion?
So the motion would be to issue the ORAD confirming the line as shown on the plan dated November 24th, 2015.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is 242-1668, 180 Mill Pond Road.
So this, we were just waiting for a DEP file number, which we received, so this can close an issue.
Any questions? Motion?
Wasn't at the last meeting. Deb?
I move to close 242-1668 and close and issue a decision within
21 days.
21 days. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm pregnant today.
Deb's been on the road for a while.
Next one is 242-1669, request to continue to 12/16.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, good. Next one is 242, no DEP number yet, 492 Sutton Street, Lawrence Airport. And I am going to have, as an abutter, I'm going to have to lose myself, but I won't leave. I like to listen.
You can stay for the show.
Stay for the show. Short show, I hope.
I've been accused of being long-winded before. I will do my best.
Thank you.
I am going to heavily use my PowerPoint presentation, so I will have to bother the commission to...
No, they have it down here.
Oh,
Really fancy.
And we see what you see.
fantastic.
People at home think we're just nodding off, looking at the
And are you going to be able to change the slides for me, Jennifer? That's great. I'd like to start off with a little bit of history. First of all, my name is Randy Christensen. I am a wetland scientist with Stantec. We are the consultants of record for Lawrence Municipal Airport and the Lawrence Municipal Airport Commission, who is the applicant for this project. We were before the commission about a year ago for the crosswind runway. And the crosswind or the minor runway at Lawrence, proposing safety area improvements as required by the master plan. And that runway is called 1432. And I'd like to report tonight that we've successfully completed construction on that project. In fact, just before Thanksgiving, we're able to put the final hydroseed and soil tackifier down, so it'll weather through the winter and get some good stabilization through June of next year. And I think you'll see us requesting a COC probably next June or July on that project. It went very well. Interacted quite often with Heidi of your team, and construction went really well. We had favorable conditions and real happy with how it came out. So I just wanted to report that tonight. We had separated out the 1432 project because we saw it as the easier. We had originally put all the safety area work under one basket, and the 523, which is the main runway at Lawrence, had its own set of tricky circumstances relative to wetlands and other protected resources. And so we had separated that one out to treat it by its lonesome. And I'm here tonight, finally, after iterations of alternatives, et cetera, finally found one that we felt comfortable presenting to the North Andover Conservation Commission, prepared the notice of intent, and here I am tonight. As part of that history, know that the 523 safety area project was before Mass Environmental Policy Act and the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs during the environmental assessment process. They call it the ENF process, excuse me. And ENS were filed, and we met with MEPA. We were actually to the draft environmental impact report stage with one of our alternatives. Bottom of the ninth inning, we actually found an alternative that minimized impacts enough to get us out of the MEPA process. It was a fairly significant financial hit for the airport, but the getting out of the whole variance process, the MEPA process, all of that was well worth the time. And I think it would have come to fruition anyway, even if we had gone all the way through MEPA. Minimization of impacts is one of those things we're mandated to do. And we would have ended up right back here anyway. So happy to be here tonight with an alternative that I think, after all is said and done, might be palatable to the North Andover Conservation Commission. Next slide, please. As with the 1432 runway safety area project, project purpose and need. There is a federal mandate for runway safety area compliance at airports that receive state and federal funding, and that it is mandated through the airport design criteria, which in this case is FAA Advisory Circular 150-5200-13A. And it's 13A because every time they come up with a major design upgrade for airports, they upgrade the AC and it becomes 14, and then 14A and 15, et cetera. And so what's important here is the 150-5200 series of advisory circulars is the mandated airport design. Be you an airport in Arizona, California, or Massachusetts, these are the safety area requirements for your particular set of criteria at your airport. And it's a way of making sure you have continuity between the airport system throughout the country, and even internationally to some extent, because the FAA advisory circulars and design criteria end up in some of the federal international regulations as well. And so again, when a pilot leaves here and flies to another airport for the first time, he can expect a similar set of circumstances, requirements, design criteria at the airport that he's going to. He does not need to be familiar with that airport to be safe in landing, taking off, etc. Current RSAs 4523 are 100 feet short. They need to be 300 feet long by 150 feet wide for the airport reference code for that particular runway. As we were with runway 1432, we are a B2 airport reference code. And if you were to go to the design criteria in that advisory circular, you would find a clearly written table requiring that 300 by 150 foot dimension for your RSA. So that is beyond the runway end. You need that level turf surface, suitably compacted to hold up an aircraft if it undershoots or overshoots a runway. And now we have 200 feet plus or minus beyond each runway end. We need 300. So in the overall length of 523, we're 200 feet of level area short in what we need to provide safety areas at each end. And the project will provide the required RSA length while maintaining the present utilization of the runway, the present runway length, present runway operational capacity. And the corollary to that is this project has nothing to do with improving capacity, improving the size or speed of aircraft that use it, or the number of aircraft that use it. It will have no effect on that whatsoever. It'll just bring that runway up into and meeting one of the design criteria that the FAA mandates for an airport of this type. Next slide, please. The components that will interest the Commission, obviously the entire project will, but these are the components that actually involve work in buffer zone, including the 25-foot buffer zone. Bless you. And actually, we do have work in wetlands on this project as well. So we have the runway 23 end, providing the safety area at the runway 23 end, providing the safety area at the runway 5 end, reducing the runway width, and this becomes very significant in our mitigation features for this project, how there is a net benefit for wetlands associated with the project. We are reducing the runway width from 150 feet to 100 feet. And this is a 5,000-foot long piece of pavement, so we're reducing 50 feet along its entire length. When you start doing the math, as I will for you later in the presentation, you're going to see it's a significant reduction and a significant improvement in our stormwater numbers. Because of the runway shift that is actually the impetus behind this alternative, we have to shift the lighting, the electrical for the edge lighting, the navigational aids, and all the signage along the runway has to shift in order to make this project work as well. We're going to shift runway run-up areas. Because we are actually shifting the runway location, as I will show you in a minute, the run-up areas where the pilot sits in a fat piece of pavement, gets the engine warmed up to temperature, makes sure that everything is working properly, can't be located where they are now, because once we shift the runway, they get actually moved into areas where we'd have to fill wetland to accommodate them where they're normally located. So we had to chase them back down the taxiways, finding an area where there was enough upland to actually situate the run-up areas, and I'll show you that. We're going to reconstruct the entire runway 523 pavement as part of this project. So they will actually grind and put down the pavement over the subbase that's there as well. And we're going to repair and upgrade airport drainage. The head walls and the pipes going to the existing drainage features out there are in states of disrepair, and we're taking the opportunity here to upgrade all those drainage features as well. Next, please. Project impacts. We have 2-3 end of the runway will be within the 25-foot buffer. We have some grading in the 25-foot buffer. The runway 5 end, that is where we're shifting this whole runway. We're sliding it down to the 5 end. That's where we actually have the impacts to inland bank, 550 linear feet, and 2,610 square feet of impact to vegetated wetland. We have drainage head wall repairs. This is basically a replacement in kind, but there's 2 locations that are in the 25-foot buffer, and so that drainage repair will involve that work as well. We have a wetland creation site that is about 20 foot tall of old fill soils, asphalt, concrete, you name it, it's in there. Poor internal drainage has allowed the establishment of a little cattail stand on top of it. And in order to develop the wetland creation site, which is quite a large one, it's over 8,000 square feet, there is a local bylaw wetland associated with those cattails of 882 square feet that we'll be impacting to properly remove all that fill, remove all those invasive species, and actually create a wetland creation site at that location.
Good news, 882 square feet doesn't make it. It's not jurisdictional.
Under your bylaw?
1,000.
Aha.
So,
Good.
missed that, sorry.
I missed that too. Project mitigation, as we get into the plans, wetland creation site of 8,210 square feet is a 2.4 to 1 replacement.
Was that a typo on the prior slide? Because he said 8,200 a couple of times, and
He's just talking about there's this little
There's
wet
a-
area, little tiny wet area, and we looked at it when we were out on site, and I said, well, it's got the veg, and it had the there was water in it, and we
so the
looked at it.
existing's the 820.
But he was gonna look at it to see if it met the criteria, and it doesn't, it's less than 1,000 square feet.
So yeah, the 8,210 is,
It's pure
it
coincidence.
is, it is.
Yeah, that's a much bigger thing.
Thought I missed a decimal point. So the actual wetland creation site, once graded, as you'll see on the plans, is 8,210 square feet. Again, gives us about 2.4 to 1 replacement of the lost vegetated wetland. The runway 5 end We've actually, and I actually pushed this alternative on the engineers. We were going to go with a straight culvert for the intermittent stream that we're crossing. I went with a relocation, so there's actually 600 linear feet of inland bank associated with relocating that intermittent stream around the end of our new fill. But by doing that, we're creating a certain amount of bank as well, and we're impacting 550 linear feet by relocating it. We're creating 600 feet and another 1,200 square feet of vegetated wetland at that location. Impervious surface reduction, you heard me say about the reduction in runway width from 150 feet to 100 feet. 6.2 acres of impervious surface reduction at the airport. It's a big, big chunk of pavement will be gone from this airport, replaced with topsoil and turf. The stormwater discharges leaving the airport at our 2 design points significantly lower, as I will show you, and upgrades to the drainage system as far as catch basins and outfalls to maintain our stormwater pollution prevention plan for the facility. Next, please. Stormwater results. We have 2 design points, one at Charles Street, where our drainage leaves the site, and one at Holt Road. Charles Street, just real quick, for the 210, 25, and 100, you'll see pre- and post-development. Because of this pavement reduction, we're actually getting flow reductions at those points from about 13.69 CFS for the 2-year storm, at the 100-year storm, 7.54 CFS reduction. So everything is less, and quite a bit less, over that span of storm events. Next, please. That's for Charles Street. That is in the the driveway going up to the sewage treatment plant. So all our drainage crosses their driveway in a double culvert. That's our design point. This one at Holt Road, if those of you know Holt Road real well, all our drainage from that 2-3 end of the runway all goes under a single culvert. It goes behind that capped landfill, and that's our design point leaving at that site. And you're going to see significant flow reductions, 20.95 CFS for the 2-year, 31.1 CFS for the 100-year. Again, all due to mainly due to that 6.2 acres of pavement reduction at the site. Next, please. This is a photo looking at the existing 2-3 end. I just want you to know what is out there. That steep slope you see in the background, that is actually parallel with the end of the runway. So that is what the top of that would be considered the end of the safety area. Right there at the toe, as you can see from the purple loose strife, took this at the right time of year to show you where the wetlands were. We have wetlands starting right at the toe of that slope. And so that's the 2-3 end environment. That slope is about 30 plus or minus 30-something feet tall above the elevation of the wetland. So it's actually a pretty tall slope. So if we were to do any work at the 2-3 end, that toe would move out and it would impact that vegetated wetland that you see right there right away. And then we have another stream channel, intermittent stream channel, just to the right of that, that vegetated wetland. So we have a pretty good wetland complex at the 2-3 end. This is the end I wanted to avoid. This is the one where between the good emergent and scrub shrub wetland and the condition of the intermittent stream at this end, a lot better than the 5 end, we decided to avoid impacts at this end, not move that toe of slope, hold it in place, and move everything down to the 5 end. Next, please. At the 5 end, here is the existing 5 end. Again, pretty precipitous slope that we have there. Top right of the photo is the end of the safety area at the 5 end. Comes down to a bench that you can see there mid-slope. And then right at the toe is an intermittent stream. But right after that intermittent stream channel, it goes right up to upland again. We don't have that emergent complex, that scrub shrub complex associated with the 2-3 end. So here, we do have wetlands right at the toe of slope, but we get out of them very quickly. And we also have a lack of vegetated wetland at this end. There's a narrow 1-foot band along this intermittent stream channel, but there is not that large emergent marsh like we had at the 2-3 end. So the pictures I was just trying to show you the difference in wetland condition at the 2 runway ends. Next, please. And this is a picture of the channel, the left, and it's pretty tough to see, but that's about a 5-foot wide intermittent channel, devoid of water. It usually is. It's dry most of the year, but when it rains, it flashes up really quickly. Drains everything, all those side streets along Sutton Street, those residential side streets, all the way up to where that we have that storage container area, a storage garage on the airport property as you're on Sutton Street. that whole area, all those hangars, it all drains down to this. All that was residential side streets off Sutton Street, all come down to this point. So it's a lot of pavement, a lot of pavement in this watershed, which explains the real flashy flow nature. So this is just two representative photographs showing the condition of the channel, its dry nature, and some of the typical vegetation associated with it. Next, please. And then I also wanted you to know what the wetland creation site looked like. That's a big stand of Japanese knotweed in the background. The foreground is that area. You can see those cattails on the middle foreground right. That is the 882 square foot area that, because of the poor internal drainage of all the fill that was dumped there and no outlet, it basically has promoted that stand. The knotweed is growing on some old asphalt, some old concrete, and in the foreground right, there's a big asphalt pile as well. This has just was a dumping grounds historically from the construction of the airport, and many projects worth of debris were dumped here over the years. We plan as part of the creation site to remove that and actually make this back into wetland. Next, please. Next, please. So you'll see the runway 523 going left, right, and that is basically our limits. 2-3 end is on the right, and the 5 end on the left. 2-3 end was the one with that emergent wetland right at the toe of slope. 5 end is the one with the intermittent stream. So basically, Merrimack River is at the top of the plan, off the property at the top of the plan, and all drainage had to get around our runway system. So all they did is they kept building the thing out, and all the drainage from Sutton Street on down has to go around those runway ends in order to get to the Merrimack River. That's these two intermittent streams that I'm talking about. That's the way that drainage from this whole part of town here gets around the runway in these two channels. One of them we propose crossing at the 5 end and holding the TOA slope at the 2-3 end so we don't get into that emergent wetland. So basically we are shifting to get our safety areas. We are shifting this entire 5,000 foot runway 100 feet to the left. That'll give us our 300 feet of safety area at the 2-3 end because we have 200 feet there now. And we will shift it. We'll add 100 feet of pavement at the 5 end and then our entire 300 feet of safety area at the 5 end as well. That brings us over that intermittent stream channel, and that's where all our impacts occur. So we have grading work at the 2-3 end and the 25 foot, but no wetland impacts. But at the 5 end, that's where our wetland impacts are. You'll see a lot of those gray shadows, particularly at the 2-3 end on the right. That's where a lot of our pavement reduction is coming from, those huge run-up areas that you see there on the right. That's a large chunk of the 6.2 acres of reduction of impervious surface. You also see in this plan, and I will do this for you. You will see, oh, that's not going to work. So you see those two gray areas midway between the 5 end and the intersection and the 2-3 end and the intersection. I talked about the relocation of the run-up areas. We had to chase down that taxiway until we found a place where we could actually put a run-up area that wasn't going to interfere with wetlands. Typically, those run-up areas are all the way end of the taxiway, right next to where you enter onto the runway. And so he runs up his aircraft and enters onto the runway pavement right away. We had to come all the way down the taxiway to create two new asphalt bump outs, these run-up areas, kind of on an atypical location. And so those represent places where actually new surface will be paved for those run-up areas. Yes? We had, as another benefit for that one at the 5 end, we have residential properties pretty close to the property line there at the 5 end. During the master plan process, there were some complaints about the noise of run-up, and it can be a noisy process with some aircraft, and so that run-up area was moved a little bit further down, also to accommodate the wishes of residences that were on that master plan committee and had those complaints from that neighborhood. So there's another benefit of moving that run-up area further down the taxiway. Next, please. So here's the 5 end. We have two blue lines there. The one that's very symmetrical is our stream relocation. The one that to the right of that is the actual intermittent channel. We delineated the bank, which gave us the dark blue color there, and there were some narrow strips of vegetated wetland outside of bank in a few locations, and so you have some light blue along that that represent a patch of vegetated wetland here and there along that channel. So we could have reduced the wetland impacts quite a bit by just going with a culvert through the fill. So if we had just put a culvert in the channel, in the intermittent channel, we'd be reducing impacts quite a bit. For the stream openness standards and the stream crossing standards, we'd have a culvert somewhere in the 10 by 10 to 14 by 14 range to meet the openness standards because of the length of the fill here. And the length of what we'd be putting in a culvert, that size culvert, we did a habitat assessment on this particular channel, and we do find it being used as a conduit of for a wildlife corridor from a wooded section along Merrimack River to wooded wetlands that are just south of the airport along those residential properties. And I think we'd lose that continuity no matter what size culvert we put in there. And so I came up with a concept of rerouting a channel around the end of our fill, revegetating it, and building it in such a way with bioengineering materials that provides for a higher order channel than we actually have there right now. I won't go into the details, but we have core mesh logs, a lot of high-end erosion control fibers and fabrics in there, specialized seed mixes, live stakes and stickers of native shrubs versus the invasives that presently dominate that entire system. And so we want to recreate a stream system around our fill. And again, this was a man-made system to begin with. We want to create a better man-made system around the end of our fill here and basically replace all the bank right where it is, replace the vegetated wetland that's lost there, and create a system there as opposed to putting this in a culvert. Again, if we just went with a straight culvert, we'd be down in impact under both vegetated wetland and bank. It would be minimized. You can see with this design, we need to intercept the channel further up from the fill and put it back in further down from the fill. If we were doing a culvert, it would just be right in the fill limits and that's it. We wouldn't have to have these 45-degree bends in the channel. I still strongly believe that this is a better environmental result than a typical engineering culvert installation here, and it's something I will go with, point that out to Jennifer when we take our comprehensive site walk. We'll look at this in detail. We are still open to the culvert, but I do believe from environmentally this to be a better solution. You can see the square box, light square box that represents the safety area that we are creating. That represents the 300 by 150 safety area. All the rest represents the side slopes necessary to support the standard safety area. Next, please. At the 2-3 end, you're going to see something quite different. This is where, again, we shifted everything down to the 5 end to avoid the wetlands at the 2-3 end. And so,
Not that
this is this is good. This is just very quickly, typical along runway 523, the green represents area that is paved now that will no longer be paved. So you'll see a few slides here where it's just showing you the reduction in pavement width along this ledge. Next. And here is that reduction again, and that changed run-up area. And here we are at the 2-3 end with the next slide.
So you're in buffer zone with this run-up area?
Yes, we are. We moved it down. We came quite a ways down the taxiway. This was the first location available to us to actually build the run-up area. We are outside the 25-foot, but just like 26 feet away. We're just outside of the 25-foot with that. So here's the 2-3 end. You're going to notice that there is a new threshold location. So you can see the faint outline of where the runway ends now with the barred lines. So we're shortening that by 100 feet. We have to grade that side slope a little bit in order to get the level flat area right at the end of the safety area to give us our 300 feet. So everything is shortening up. The taxiway had to be chopped off and brought back into the new runway end. And all that green area that you see is currently pavement will now be turfed, topsoil and turfed. And all the stuff that we reclaimed from that, all the existing subbase material and asphalt and everything that is going to be used in preparing the new base for our new pavement in our runway. But we do have that grading right there at the end of the safety area, right above where that emergent marsh is, and that's necessary to support this level safety area and minimize how much we actually had to shift down to the 5 end to get the full safety areas. That grading that you see there at the end of the 2-3 safety area is within the 25-foot buffer of the local bylaw. But there are no direct wetland impacts at this end at all. And that's the good news with the shift. We avoid that entire system and maintain all of our impacts at one end. Next, please. Back at the 5 end, and real quickly, this is just showing there is an entire plan set in there showing you the different erosion control materials we are using for stabilization. We are going with 1-to-1 slopes in a lot of locations, trying to steepen up to minimize impacts. And because we are going with some steep slopes, we have to go through some extraordinary erosion control efforts to control these slopes. From the most extreme, and we only use in extreme locations, is a reinforced slope with a riprap cover. And you can see at the end of this 5 end, that rock-looking type cover. We do have to use some riprap for the steepest section right there. But as soon as we get out of that 1-to-1 and we get into something less steep than that, we are going with soil tackifier and erosion control blanket. That soil glue that we've used successfully on so many projects and actually implemented on the 1432 project as well. We are using extensively here. And everywhere that you see where we're grading in the buffer zone there, we're also going with just soil tackifier without the blanket on top of it. We are going with tackifier there as well. So this 5 end just shows you where new pavement is, where the new runway end is, and some of the different erosion controls that we're using to control our slopes in this location. Next. 2-3 ends, same thing. You'll see a lot of the dark gray being the soil tackifier. You're going to see a little bit of the riprap right where we're getting down close to the wetland, again, because we wanted to hold that toe where it was. So we had to do a little bit of riprap for the steeper part, soil tackifier above it. The rest of the steep slopes right now, there are very steep slopes. We're flattening them out a little bit, so they're much easier for Mike to maintain. Right now, he has a very difficult time mowing them. So we're actually taking some of the steepness out of those slopes around there, using some of that fill for our project down at the other end. So there's a maintenance benefit for the airport. Steep slopes are never good from a drainage perspective either, but also from a mowing perspective. So again, there's an entire plan set that shows some of the different erosion controls we're using throughout the project. Next, please. This is our, and I don't know if you can blow it up, and thank you, Jennifer, that's great. Our wetland creation site, again, we're trying to encompass that entire fill area, and more importantly, trying to maximize our grading where all the Japanese knotweed is. And so we have a bottom floor elevation of 96, and the 96-97 contour is where we get our 8,800 plus square feet of mitigation, vegetated wetland mitigation here. We connect out to an existing wetland. The side slopes are not too bad. They're about mainly, we go pretty steep right at where it's connecting to the existing wetland to avoid taking down any mature trees along the existing wetland boundary. But as soon as we get outside of those mature trees, we go right into a 2-on-1 and 3-on-1. We flatten out those slopes quite a bit. But again, as Jennifer and I saw in the field when we looked at this preliminarily, we want to avoid taking out any shade trees that happen to be in these fill slopes that are currently shading these wetlands. So the connection, I really tighten it up quite a bit. But as soon as I get out of the connection, we go with much flatter slopes. This will be a shrub wetland. We have shrub plantings proposed. There is a planting schedule and a wetland seed mix proposed. There is an extensive native or naturalized upland seed mix for all the side slopes. We have a stockade fence to permanently mark and block this area. And there is a nice kind of a landscape type cedar stockade fence that will be installed here. We also have an invasive species control that not only for our mitigation site, but we go 100 feet out into the adjacent wetland for a cut and dab of invasive shrubs, which are very prevalent in this wetland. We don't want them creeping into the mitigation sites, so we have quite an extensive invasive shrub species mitigation plan for this. We have 5 years worth of monitoring and maintenance proposed in the notice of intent. It's quite extensive. The reporting, the indices that we need to report to you on a yearly basis, how many plant data plots are going to be there, where they're going to be located. We also have a permanent monitoring well that we're installing in here with a permanent water monitoring device in it. It takes a reading every half hour as to what the water level is relative to the floor elevation of the replication basin to show you that for the growing season, we have groundwater within a foot or two of the surface for the entire growing season. And so there are a lot of features to this plan and the detail sheet that show a lot of thought and effort into this replication site. We also include tables and data of existing groundwater elevations in that area that support the grading scheme that we've developed here. Next, please. And the other mitigation feature, or I call it a mitigation feature, is the actual intermittent stream relocation. You're going to see at the top there is where the existing intermittent channel is, and then you can see our blue at the bottom, which is our proposed channel. Those bends that you see are modeled on existing bends that are in that stream, so we know the geology can handle that much of a bend. If we were to go with sharper bends, we'd be able to tighten this up a little bit and reduce our impacts, but we couldn't find anywhere without really a lot of hard armoring supporting anything but about that 45-degree bend there. Trying to go with a steeper than or sharper turn than 45 degrees, we'd have to start going with riprap at our corners, and we end up being more of an engineering feature than a habitat feature. So this is what we ended up with. The channel itself can handle the flow rates that we've modeled for the stream. In fact, those data are in the notice of intent. And there are planting schemes, bioengineering materials, and everything established for this relocated channel. And again, 550 linear feet of bank impacted, 600 linear feet of bank replaced. You can see the stream, proposed stream, is a little bit longer than the existing one. And we're also accounting for about 2 square feet for every linear foot of bank, about 2 square feet of vegetative wetland coming in along this channel, but we don't take credit for that. Our only credit for vegetative wetland mitigation is actually in our wetland creation site. And you'll find that description again in the notice of intent. Next slide, please. So what I tried to present you is a very short version of how we ended up with this alternative to get out of the MEPA process and the wetland variance process with Mass Department of Environmental Protection. The impacts associated with this particular alternative, we do go through an alternatives analysis in the notice of intent. There are 4 of them described there. It gave you some sense of the result of the stormwater analysis, and it's actually very good news, mainly because of the pavement reduction here. Gave you some sense of the mitigation features, the prime mitigation features involved with the project, the wetland creation site, the stream relocation, and of course the stormwater improvement features. The notice of intent has quite a bit more detail than I've given you tonight, but I wanted to introduce you to the project just to show you what it is. Mainly what you need to remember is that we are going with an alternative that shifts this entire runway down to one end, again causing movement of nav aids, lights, taxiway entrances, run-up areas, etc. Our original proposal was to just simply build the safety areas off each end, and we were up in between 11 and 20,000 square feet of impact at that point doing it that way. And so we've actually been able to get it down to about 2,500 square feet from where we originally started of somewhere between 11 and 20,000 square feet. So again, we think the alternative does minimize impacts. Whether it's acceptable or not obviously is in your purview, but I do want you to recognize the minimization attempt that was made by the design team and the Airport Commission with this project. I'm scheduling a site visit with Jennifer to review wetland boundaries, to review the habitat assessment, to look at the mitigation sites, and I think that's scheduled for December 11th, Friday. We'll have our initial 3 hours to go over it then. We may need some more, but that'll get a good chunk of at least the oversight of the impact areas and the mitigation areas out of the way. And it's a good start to the project, so I hope it's a good introduction for you. I do expect to have some questions posed and some more data provided to you, but I hope you get a general flavor for what we've been through and how we arrived at where we are. So, thank you.
I don't mind saying right out of the gate, I'm usually skeptical of big projects like this, but I'm not sure whether I'm accustomed to your good work or the good performance of past airport projects. But this is a very, very good stuff from what I see. A lot of things that we would normally charge you with going out and do, you anticipated, and so just a matter of, I think, give us a real good thorough
Sure.
review. I think you're well on the way.
I would welcome the opportunity, especially you, Joe, since we go back quite a ways, to sit on one of these runway ends and actually talk about these alternatives further, because I think I won't do it justice, the plan won't do it justice. Sitting on one of those runway ends and taking it all in, I really would welcome the opportunity to show that to the commission. I know you're a volunteer, and I know your time is limited, especially in this dark time of year, but I would make myself available any at all time to have that opportunity to show you that in the field.
Look forward to running through this project with you guys.
Thanks, Joe.
No questions. Thank you for the presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you, Doug.
What is the minimal requirement for width of the runway?
The 150 goes back to kind of World War II development days, and 150 was always identified as too wide for this airport. It represents a maintenance headache, a plowing headache. I had to put that in for you, Mike. So the reduction was always a very tempting thing to do at this airport, but you can't do it until you actually have a runway reconstruction proposed. So FAA and Mass DOT, in their wisdom, saw this runway safety area project as an opportunity to do everything at once. There's an economy of scale with bidding projects. Once you have all the machinery out there to pave and everything like that, you might as well do all your paving projects. So this was a good opportunity to actually reduce this. There's a lot that happens when you reduce it. All your lights have to come into the new edge. It's a big undertaking. They don't take it lightly. But for a B2 airport reference code, 150 was overkill for this particular airport. So yes, we are not losing anything operationally by reducing this pavement. Fortunately for us, it also has good environmental benefits, and for our stormwater for this project, it certainly gave a good story. But you are right in asking, operationally, the 150 was never needed for this current use at the airport.
What is the minimum?
I've seen B2s as narrow as 75 feet. I don't know if that is standard or not. I can answer that question via email and send that in to Jennifer.
Is there any reason to go above what is standard? I mean, as far as us getting some more back? How'd you come up, why the 100 versus the 75, if that's the minimum?
I will have to look at the master plan for that. And with capital improvement program and airports that are funded federally, everything goes back to the master plan. They evaluate your traffic. They assign you your airport reference code. And I think I hammered this during the 1432 project. Everything goes back to the airport reference code because that's how they build your airport. If it's a B2, all the safety area length, runway width, navigational aids, everything build on top of that. You go to that B2 table on all those design criteria. That's how you pick out your navigational aids, your runway widths, your taxiway setbacks, everything. And so for a B2, I would have to see whether or not there is a minimum maximum range or if there is a set width. And I'll have to look at the master plan for that.
And I assume the airport will not have any traffic coming in or out of it while this project's going on?
We will try to phase it so that there might be some minimal closure. A lot of times we will restripe it, portions of it, so 3/4 of it's available while you're doing one end. I have not worked on that with Dave yet, but there will be a time where we will have to close down the runway. We're trying to schedule it so only a part of the runway is closed at any one time, but at some point where we have to repave the center of the airport, the actual intersection, yes, both runways will be closed. A very big hardship, and that's where we're going to be working 24/7 during those periods. There's nighttime paving, things like that involved because we have to minimize that closure, but yes.
And when do you anticipate the project would start, and how long do you think it would take?
We anticipate bidding this spring. We anticipate June to July start, and it's going to be a 2-year project. Right now, we're trying to do the mitigation the first year. I'm still working on this with the engineers. We have to do that stream relocation and the mitigation site and everything like that first. The second year, the paving and the runway reconstruction will occur. So it's very possible the first year is going to be maybe one of the safety areas and the mitigation sites, whereas that second year is going to be the full depth reconstruction and the pavement and everything else. So we anticipate 2 years to do this. We don't have that figured out yet, but I certainly don't want to go through the winter with any of those slopes unstabilized. I've been through on airport projects like that before, and I want to go through it again. So I'll be working with the engineers to make sure the sequencing of events, we don't end up with an overwinter problem, at least in the buffer zone. So.
Great, thank you.
have no questions.
Okay, well, we have to, well, I got,
Joe, you're the chair for this, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we're getting a little,
But
I forgot, thank you for reminding me.
Sure.
I should have been asking anybody had any questions, but there being none, you ready to continue for 2 weeks, or
I
you're
would
doing your
ask
site
for-
walk when, the
The
11th?
11th, 9 AM,
And our next meeting is right after
the
that? And you think
16th.
it will be prepared to continue this discussion
Well,
after that
at
site
that
walk?
point, I would think all of you would have had more time to read through that. I'll certainly have my, I read through it, I didn't critique it from the standpoint of even just listening tonight. I now have more questions I've been writing down, but at least by the next meeting, maybe we can formulate what our concerns are for them. Or if you have anything ahead of time you want to give to me, and we can present to them.
So we think we're ready to go for the next meeting, just so 2-week continuance.
I mean, if that's enough for everyone to get through the material.
So moved.
Motion made and second to continue, I don't have the date, but 2 weeks.
16th.
16th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and we're continued to the 16th, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
It's a short meeting night, right? 16th
Okay.
is a short meeting night?
I don't think we have one, so.
We're supposed to get out of here, right?
next one, we have a couple of continuances here. 242-1601, request to continue to December 16th.
So moved.
Second.
I recuse myself from that vote,
Okay.
as an abutter.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And we have 242-1620, COC request for 179 Osgood Street, request to continue to 12/16.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Okay, next one is 242-1637, COC request for 100 Polly Tavern Road.
So Heidi reviewed this, was out there. There was an administrative mod as well as a formal modification on this, and the as-built complies to those plans. No disturb markers are up, erosion controls are out, and the site is stable. So she recommends a full certificate of compliance.
Any questions? Motion?
Move that we grant certificate of compliance for 242-1637 for 100 Town Road.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That's unanimous. Next one is 242-158, PCOC request for 265 Bay Hill Road.
This is non-jurisdictional, so just administrative.
Yeah. It's not jurisdiction.
So I move that we grant a partial certificate of compliance against order conditions 242-158, specific only to lot number 31, also known as 265 Bear Hill Road.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One abstention.
And one abstention. Thank you, Sean. Next one is 242-1574, COC request for 71 Winter Green.
This is a request to withdraw. They have monitoring requirements they haven't met yet.
I move that we allow the withdrawal.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Is that the right motion?
I guess
I've
that
done one
works.
of those before.
Sounds good.
No, do we, I don't know, don't do a motion for that?
We usually, to allow them to withdraw without prejudice,
No
but,
prejudice, 'cause they
but in
get
that
the
case,
feedback.
I don't think there's any feedback, so.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1480, COC request for 14 Lorraine Avenue.
So this, I had forgotten that this one, I remembered 15 had been appealed to DEP, so this is for the local bylaw only. They'll have to get their DEP certificate of compliance. But they did install the wall, the markers. At the top of the plan, you'll see there was a restoration area because they added in a screen porch was a modification. I think Heidi points out that There's some stairs that weren't constructed and a HVAC unit you can see on the bottom side of the house, the south side there. But other than that, everything complies.
Any questions? Motion?
I move that we grant the COC request for 14 Lorraine Ave, 242 1480.
Local bylaw only. Sorry.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next we have a enforcement order for 1261 and 24216.
This is just asking to give them another 2 weeks. They have, Mr. Burke has been in touch with me every week, letting me know he's trying to get all 7 owners signed on to the homeowners agreement for maintaining the stormwater system. He has 6 of the 7 signatures as of now, and I still need an update as to, he was doing repairs, things that needed to be finalized, and I didn't hear from Ben back on that, so he's asking for 2 more weeks. But I do get, you know, from an enforcement standpoint, he's constantly in touch, and I know what's going on, so I don't feel like this is, we're losing it. It's just taking time.
So we need a motion to
Motion to continue if
To
you're
continue to
inclined to give him
12/16.
more time.
So moved.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
And just for the record, I recused on those
abstention.
votes.
Just for the record, that's to continue to the 16th, correct?
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
And we have a decision, 2421668.
I don't know why I brought the bucket. I haven't even pulled anything out of it all night long. Let's see. So this is a drainage project above the retaining wall at the top of the driveway, reconstruction of the top of the driveway, and repavement of the rest of the driveway. And then there was a new walkway and stairs at the front of the house. The driveway currently does cross through the wetland, and there is a culvert, but there were no waivers other than repaving within,
Mr.
yep. I had put the bond at 1,000.
Any questions? Bless you. Motion, if there's no questions?
Motion that we approve the decision for 242 1668 180 Mill Road as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.